Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Truth Will Set You Free show. This show is brought to you by TLBTV and the Liberty Beacon Project. I'm your host, Linda Diane Wattley. And you know I love my guests. I appreciate my guests. Today, I could be a little relaxed because my guest seems to be kind of a laid-back guy, so it kind of calms me down because usually I'll be like really excited. But today I just want to focus in and just enjoy the moment. My guest today is Mr. John McClung Jr. McClung?
That is correct.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you got it.
Junior. He is founder and CEO of I Am a Testimony Clothing Collection. He resides in Georgia, Austell, Georgia. Married, beautiful life. He is the eldest son of late Pastor John E. McClung Sr., former pastor of Living Word Missionary Baptist Church in Long Beach, California. He is a graduate of University of Phoenix with 3 degrees in business. Busy man. He is an amazing motivational speaker. He is also a trainer, encouraging people to be in a better state of mind. I mean, the things that he do is just unbelievable. But the thing that fascinates me about him is he don't say he's an entrepreneur. He's also ministerial, though. Are you a minister?
Yes.
Yes. Now, see, I found you to be quite ministerial because you have messages all the time. I mean, it's like, wow, is there ever a time that your mind or your spirit is just allowing you to just be here, or just messages is constantly coming? How does that work?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you for being a part of your show and this platform, because it's an awesome opportunity to do something that's something that I like, and that's be able to share and then also interact and build relationships. But to answer your question, I think because of the assignment that I have, I get consistent downloads when I sit still, because I know that the assignment that I was given over a year or so ago to do what you have seen as far as my videos, Spiritual Message Moments, that was my platform and task and assignment to get me ready for a larger goal. But I had to be consistent on a week-to-week basis with that particular assignment. And that's the same thing with anyone who has a vision or they have been given a task spiritually to do. You have to be consistent, because eventually you're going to be called upon. And so when you are called upon, you should be ready based on what you've already practiced.
But it's so amazing that you do so much. It was like I wasn't going to try to just tell everybody everything that you do, because it's like you just constantly flowing out, and you're serious about it. It is not anything that you do that you're not serious about. Like, tell us a little bit about branding, because you take that very seriously.
I do. As you know, I am the owner of I Am a Testimony Clothing, which I got that vision in 2009 and started the business in 2011, the apparel line. And when you talk about branding, I think one of the biggest challenges is that people don't understand, before you even do a business brand, you are your own personal brand. So you have to actually represent who you are above all things before you even start your business. Because if you are not a representation of what you are going to be doing as far as a business, people are not going to follow you. They're not going to listen to you, because they've already watched you in the way you represent your own personal brand. So your name, I was just speaking to a group, Holiday Inn, and one of the questions I asked them was, how many of you own a business? And nobody raised their hand. And I said, that's too bad, because each one of you are your own business. Because the one thing that is the most important, even in Proverbs, it says, a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches. So you got to have a good name, and every business or every brand starts out with a good name.
Wow. So why is I Am a Testimony so profound with you that it trails you everywhere you go? What really what really puts you there into, valuing that statement?
You have to, and that's a great question. And I think I will give you a natural and a spiritual answer. I think naturally, from a natural standpoint, each one of us have been through some type of challenge, test, trial, tribulation. But one of the biggest challenges is that we oftentimes are afraid to talk about it or share it with someone else. So from a spiritual standpoint of that, my apparel brand, what if you had the opportunity to share with somebody and you may not be comfortable enough to approach them or allow them to approach you and be in your circle of influence, but yet you may have the apparel on and they ask you that question: why are you a testimony? Or that is a great shirt, or what does that shirt mean to you? You have just given an open invitation to actually share your story. And it's twofold, because you get a chance to hear their story, which could affect your life, or vice versa. They get a chance to hear why you have that shirt on or why you're a testimony. And my company is based on John 3:33, which is, he that hath received this testimony has set to his seal that God is true, which means your testimony is stamped and approved by God.
So I thought it was something personal about it, because I was thinking that you was talking about yourself.
It is. I'm transparent. I went through a great deal of things from a standpoint of divorce. I went through homelessness, unemployment. I went through all the things that a lot of individuals go through, and they don't talk about it because they may be shameful about it. And for me, the platform and the I would say the width of which individuals I will be touching and making an impact on was going to be so large that there was no way that I couldn't go through those things because of the individuals that I will be sharing with. And when I do a spiritual message moment every week, there's hundreds of people who see those videos, and then there are people who get it shared, and I don't even know who those individuals are. So it could be thousands. And so for me to be able to make an impact on them, and this goes with anybody, for you to really make an impact, you have to live what you've gone through. And you have to be able to live it in such a way that you can share it and people can actually be impacted by it because it's true. So the things, when I say I am a testimony, the things I talk about is true.
So what was the catalyst of all the testimonial reality that, propelled it forward? Because usually, no matter how many experiences you have, there's something specific that propels you out there.
In 2009, I went through this divorce. It was very tough because of some of the things that happened. And I think I didn't know whether or not it was going to be a situation where I bounced back based on how things happened. And so I was asked to be a co-host on a radio show by a really good friend of mine, Dr. Karen Donald in Michigan. And after the show, or at the end of the show, my phrase would be, I am a testimony. So during the course of that time frame, a few weeks later, the Lord laid it in my spirit. That is your business, because there is no one, both spiritually or naturally, that cannot say they are a testimony from something that has happened in their life, some type of experience. And the only thing that they may ever have is the ability to wear some apparel that lets them talk about it. So that's how I got started.
So how did you become this amazing speaker?
That's DNA right there.
I believe that.
It is very much so.
And you have this one thing that everybody, it's your time.
Right now it's how to get back on track.
Oh.
And yeah, how to get back. Matter of fact, I just finished that book, and that is my second book, and it's going to be probably coming out in this is a shameless plug, in about, I think in June, July or August, I should have it ready. But speaking, I've been speaking since I was 3. My dad used to call myself and my little brother, my brother, when he went to speak at churches where he went to preach, he would always call us up and ask us to quote the books of the Bible, or a specific verse we learned at a young age, because he wanted to train up a child, in the way he should go. And so, so we would have to speak in front of hundreds of people at that young age. Fear of people, and as far as being in front of them, I got over that at very, very, very young. And so since then, it took, I'm gonna tell you something, it took me 30 plus years to realize that this was my calling. This is what I was chosen to do.
Okay, what exactly is that calling?
It really, I ran from the pulpit. I said that I would not be a preacher, but I would be, before I was born, my mom had some challenges as far as her pregnancy. So my mother and father did not know whether or not they would be able to have children at one time. And my father, who, I tell you, I've never seen anyone walk with God like he did. And it's from a standpoint of teaching and the example and all those things. So he had a walk and talk with God about having a firstborn son. And if the Lord gave him a son, that he would give him back. So I was double gifted. So I was gifted to my parents and gifted back to God. And then my father said that if he had a son, he would gift him back and he would want him to be called to preach, his firstborn. And so that was something I didn't understand as a young person until like later on in life, probably in the last couple of years, that it was something that I was never going to get away from. And so there were many who would say, man, how come you haven't done this? You have everything, from a demeanor, from a personality, from the way you present, all of the things. Your messages are impactful. They're simple. People can understand them when you do them. Why is it that you're not doing it yet? And so, I had to personally, talk with God about it. And so when it comes to speaking, there are some who are trained to speak, and then there are some who are spiritually ordained to speak. And I'm in that latter. I'm spiritually ordained to speak.
And sometimes you really don't want to.
And a lot, yeah. Yes,
you have this unique gift, because I notice how you'll take a word and then you would take each letter of that word to create a foundation for people to understand the value of that word, like how you broke down brand.
Yeah,
that was kind of like, I was like, wow. Then
that was pretty good.
Yeah, and you break down words like value, Mm-hmm. So did you just come up with it, or it just flows through you? I mean, how does that happen?
That's a great recipe that I have, and I've been fortunate enough to be blessed with. I think when I was given the task within the last year and a half, really, to present from a standpoint on a week-to-week basis, one of the things that the Lord allowed me to do is be able to use my creativity. Sometimes we get an assignment and we try to do everything but ourselves in the assignment. And so, the Lord allowed me to be, be my personable self, my creative, my laughter, my serious, all those things that encompass being able to present. And I always remember what my father taught my brother and I when we were young, very young. And it was, whenever you present, make sure you have a message, make sure you know your message, make sure you include people in your message, and make sure they leave with something from your message. And so if you listen to my spiritual message moments every week and when I take a word, there is no way that you can tell that that I have a message, I know the message, I include people in the message, and they take away something from that word that I bring. And so I've always kept that, and it has just blown up, from a standpoint of acronyms, because that's my favorite thing.
Right.
And, so I can take a word, and I love the spiritual analogy, because we as people overlook words. We read right through them. And so it could, because they're just, our regular thing that we do, whatever we speak and those things. And then imagine if you can actually have a meaning that you can never let go of in reference to that word. Like, I did the one submit the other day. I didn't know it was going to take off like the way it did, but there's a lot of individuals who have not submitted and they don't know why. And then here it is, here's the 6 reasons why you should submit. And now you got a clear understanding of a word that you've been avoiding, and here's the reason why you shouldn't avoid it.
I just really like to hear your take, because a lot of people don't mention their father in their bio, but you were specific about it. And I want people to understand why you were so specific about that.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm very proud to be able to talk about my father. One of the things that when I said that he was a man that walked with God, there's a lot of individuals who over the course of my 50 plus years that I've seen in the pulpit, but I've never seen a master teacher who really taught from the pulpit. And my brother and I, we have that same skill set and the same study from a standpoint of being able to take specific things and make it simplistic. So when you hear us talk, there's something you're going to leave with. And that's the way my father taught us. And all the examples that he was from a standpoint of our home and in the community is the very thing that we try to measure up to because of how impactful to this day he has been. And he has ministers and grown folk that still would call him father because of the way he poured into their lives. And that's what we're doing. When we speak, my brother and I, wherever we speak at, or, for me, really right now, it's, the media that I do. And we look to make sure that those individuals that we have an opportunity to be in front of, that they leave with something that they can hold on to for that moment. And sometimes it's a word that they just, again, that might have been stuck in their spirit and they didn't know why it was stuck in their spirit. And here I come and I break the word down for it and it just opens up the whole thing.
Wow. I just have to know, okay, your father pretty much thought you would be behind the pulpit. How was you able to have the strength and confidence to not do it, knowing how much you honored him and respected him?
It was probably the toughest thing for both of us. I don't know if my father ever got over it from a standpoint of me not being able, not seeing me where I am now from a teaching standpoint, or even my brother who took over like 4 years after he passed, he took over the church. No one expected my brother to be the pastor at all. They always thought it was going to be me. And so to be able to walk away, I denied it literally in the pulpit on many occasions, where I said, I'm not going to be, in the pulpit, I'm not going to preach, mainly because I saw the work that was involved, the hours that my dad
sacrifices.
All the hats you have to wear as a pastor, from a standpoint of people calling you all times of nights and for different reasons, things that they probably could handle. And then the hard-headedness was the other thing, giving great information to people that works from a spiritual standpoint, and then they still running up against the wall and consistently doing the opposite of what you're teaching them. And so that used to aggravate me. But now I know what service is. He was a great servant and a great leader. And in order to be both of those, you have to put them in reverse orders on many occasions. You're going to have to serve a lot first, and then you're going to have to lead a lot. So if you don't know those two things, those were the two things that he mastered, and he taught us early how to do it. And so we were counseling, we used to sit in front of grown folks and counsel at a young age. And of course our classmates would come to us, and they still do, ask us for advice and wisdom, because they knew out of all the individuals that they grew up with, my brother and I had probably the most solid foundation when it came to your spiritual life.
Wow. I think one of the things, just listening to what you said, you just didn't want the confinement because you were so expansive on the inside. And I think that actually you are fulfilling his desire, but you're doing it in a modern time.
That's a great way.
Things were so much isolated, limited. But in your time to be ministerial, you could be on a larger scale, and you don't have to lock people in to hear you.
That's correct.
Grow. So I think you still fulfilled his desire. You just did it in your time way,
That's a
your
great
generation.
that's a great way of putting it, Linda. Because
Yeah, because even before I realized you was a minister, I said, this man is a minister. I mean, the way you bring it is so filled with the spirit, and it's free. And like Jesus said, he come that we would have life and have more abundantly, and that we would be free.
mm-hmm.
He said the truth will set you free. And this opens you up to be available to people who don't have to come and be programmed to me. I think that's one of the things people run away from church today, because the church that I saw in your father is not so much like the church today.
Correct.
As far as, projecting God. I feel like the way you do it, you're projecting God in a strong level, like he did in his time with what he had to work with. And you're doing an amazing job. I mean, people can wear God,
mm-hmm.
proud, and testify,
Right.
Then, everybody likes social media, and you are there planting so many seeds, giving people a chance to know God for themselves. Not the God that you know, but the God that God wants them to know in him. People say narrow is the way. To me, that means that you have to trust God the way he's talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
To me, your ministry is allowing people to do that. You're not confining them to a religion.
Right.
And today's people, the way society is set up, you have to find a way to reach them in a different way than years ago.
That's true. That's very true.
And I feel like you are not behind the pulpit, but you have on the robe. Yes, you do.
Well, thank you for that affirmation.
It's no doubt. It's just no doubt. And I feel that he knows it.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've learned over the last several years is that to be able to reach people at a larger volume, and I think your point is very valid. I did this one day. I work at part-time at the stadium here, and so I walked out in the middle of the stadium one day before we had one of our games. The stadium was empty, and I stood right in the middle. I did a video and said, one day I'm going to be talking to thousands of people that will fill a stadium like this. That stadium with standing room only holds about 70,000.
Wow.
And yeah, so it was empty. I did a 360. I want you to look. I'm saying this now, so you see this on video. I'll be talking to this many people. And so sometimes when we put something out there, we always think it's going to be done in a specific way. And it may be done in a totally different way, but it'd be the same impactful statement done. And so I didn't pay attention to it, Linda, until one day I got this email, or I got this note from Facebook. And I got the note that said over 77,000 people have looked at have looked at all of your notes or your videos. And I said, okay, that's cool. I didn't think about it. I said, okay. You've been seen over 77,000 times, probably more than that now. And then it hit me. It's the same amount of people that was in the stadium.
Wow.
So I said,
huge.
77,000. So it didn't matter whether or not I was standing in the stadium or out of the stadium.
It's those numbers.
That amount of people have seen what I've done from a standpoint of messages. So, when we believe in our vision, from a standpoint of what God has given us, then we have an opportunity to be able to move toward it if you believe it. And so my thing is, for me to believe was to actually do, again, the assignment every week and not pay attention to the numbers because they fluctuated. And then it hit me, and then that hit me. Every week I do a message, it's not the same amount of people. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more. But what it told me was every message and everyone who sees it, whether it's high or low, were the individuals who needed that message. So those were the ones that were pinpointed spiritually to watch that video. And so Now I understand that it's really not, it's never been about me. I used to think it was. I used to think it was about me being an assignment, but then it was really me. It was the Lord using me to be the messenger to reach out to individuals who would normally not get reached.
Exactly. That's my point. Because I remember when I was reading online about your dad, he was known as a preacher when he was a mailman preaching.
That's
So,
right.
so he
That
was
his
reaching
platform.
people, before he even, got behind the pulpit. So,
Yeah.
so you see how the transition takes place.
Oh yeah. Oh
You know,
yeah.
and the thing that I also like about you is that you wrote a book that proved that parenting is very, very important in determination of a child that's going to be an adult. In your book, I Am a Testimony, Inside the Relationship Minds of a PK, a preacher's kid.
Yeah.
You really, really fascinated me that you was able to do something like that, because you weren't lacking an example of how, a family is supposed to present themselves in the world when God is the foundation. Because your mother and father was like, wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, they were like hand in glove.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Helpmeets.
Yeah. And what stayed on my mind, you said one of the most difficult things that you had to face in reality was that what you thought was normal for you and your family was a rarity in the world.
Yeah. 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 I was, one of the things that I recognized after my teenage life, going into like the college years and all that in my 20s, was that we had the best of both worlds. I couldn't, as a young preacher son, there were things that I could not do as a young person because the eyes were always on us. But yet I had friends who were really close to us that allowed us to do some things as far as growing up and be in our circle. And then I got a chance to see the struggles that they were going through that we were not going through, because my father was spiritually, we had a great spiritual foundation. And then as you go into adulthood, when you talk about it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to raise an adult. And so, but because you have to have balance in that village. And so our village, my home village, we had balance. My dad was a funny guy, he was humorous and he was serious, but he would always challenge us mentally, even though, we had the fear of father, from him, because he had that persona from a standpoint of his personality and his character, but he had a great heart. So my mom was the best helpmeet I've ever seen, because she basically to this day shows us what it means to have a helper as a partner in the vision of the individual who's been given a task by God. And what that book showed me, when I wrote the book, here's an interesting thing, Linda. My father passed in 2000. I wrote the book in 2001, and then I didn't publish it till 2015.
Really?
Yeah, 14 years later, I published the book, because a couple of friends of mine, they read it and they was like, "Why are you holding on to this book?" I was like, "Well, it was therapy for me. It was all the things that on the backside, my father shared with my brother and I, that really a lot of people didn't get privileged to, because we had the opportunity to ask these questions and him talk about, because in a pastoral leadership role, you don't really have a lot of individuals you can talk to, because it's difficult, because you're holding on to a lot of people's problems, and trying to solve them. So who do you talk to? So my father used to talk to my brother and I, used to share things with us. And so those very things that you saw me write about in the book were directed toward individuals such as men, which is basically on the things they missed out on, because they didn't have that father figure who had both worlds in his hand. He had the spiritual and the natural aspect of it, which he could blend together and balance. And so in one case, you really have men who never had any type of example, mentor, coach, or whatever, or even father for that fact. And then you have the women who really didn't have an individual they could look at that could actually be exactly what you wanted them to be. And that's what my dad was in our home. He was exactly what my mom wanted him to be. And she ain't thought about nobody since he been gone. And she still married to him, and he been gone 18 years.
Wow.
So,
I
you
get
know,
that.
so there's no, yeah.
I mean, once you had perfection like that.
She's like, her favorite phrase to us was, there'll never be another Johnny McClung Sr., and I don't want one. And so I understood that gave me probably the greatest insight on what it means to be in the right place with the right person. So as a matter of fact, my next book that I currently just started is called Are You in the Right Garden? And it's a relationship book, recognizing real relationships. And it's based on what I've seen over the last 50 years, the first 37 with my mom and dad, but all the things that we were privy to from relationships and the misunderstandings biblically that need clarity. So I'm writing a book called, it's going to be an amazing book.
You know, I have to read it. But I'm curious about this though. Okay, you had this perfect example of this perfect couple, you might as well say.
Yeah.
When you got to that age, how did you approach women to get your wife?
I'm gonna tell you something. I messed up badly from a standpoint of not understanding this. If I would have, I'm my favorite, not my favorite. One of the things I teach is there's 9 words that you should always avoid. And that's, I wish I knew then what I know now. And so I wish I knew then what I know now. But one of the things that I didn't recognize, Linda, during the course of life up until this point was a man should never, it's not his job to look for a wife because he doesn't know what to look for. It's his job to prepare himself for the wife that's going to be sent to him, because she will be equipped with everything he needs with him, whatever he's missing. And there will be such a situation that they will be able to work together because they'll be on the same page. And so I kept looking, and that was what I didn't understand, because when I left home at 18. So there was a lot of things that I missed out on that my father really wanted to teach me, especially when it came to relationships. And so I did the crash and burn. You know, I made my mistakes, and it positioned me to be able to talk about the things that I talk about now and what I will be talking about and teaching when it comes to relationships. Because the things that I learned from the mistakes gave me balance and gave me true self, because I could be transparent about the mistakes I made. And it also gave me an opportunity to bring in what I really knew about relationships when I looked at the relationship my mom and dad had. And so when it came to women, from a verbal standpoint and from the balance that I had, those things were good. You know, I can have communication, conversation, all those things. I had a great spirit, spiritual life, at least I thought I did. But I didn't have the relationship piece because I was a young guy out there using my skill sets instead of what God had given me from a standpoint of gifts and talents, and allowing the person who was supposed to balance me out be sent or gifted to me so that I wouldn't have those challenges. Because one of the things I know for a fact is if you look as you read through the Bible, we have misconceptions about relationships when it comes to finding the right person. However, if you look at all the great men, none of them ever looked for a wife. They were always either sent a wife or gifted one. Because if we go out and look, if a man goes out and looks for a wife, he's going out naturally to look for her, not spiritually. And so if you look at from the beginning, Adam was not in position to look for a wife. The Lord gave him one, because he was doing the work that the Lord told him to do. And so he sent him a helpmeet. So I always laugh about this when people ask, well, what do you think about this? I always say, Adam was given the assignment to name the fish of the sea, the air, the fowl of the air, and the beast on the earth. But he was not given the assignment to name flowers, and trees, well, you know, grass. See, you know, Eve had to name all the cute stuff. So, so you know, that I always say that she was sent to name all the cute stuff, because when she got in the garden, the first cute thing that she got affected by was the apple. So, you know, I say she was equipped to do everything that he was not assigned to do. And so that's what I wish I would have known, because again, you know, sometimes we can be in a relationship, and I've always used to wonder, why do people say, well, we grow, you know, we kind of grew apart. I understand what that means, because what happens if you find out your purpose while you're with someone and you're with the wrong person in your purpose? And a lot of people find their purpose with the wrong person, and they don't know what to do, because that person, it wasn't assigned to them. That was the person they chose. And that's the difference.
So how would that affect their purpose if they have chosen this person and they was okay until you had a purpose?
Here's the thing. There are some individuals who will suffer in silence. They will have this burning passion inside to do a specific assignment, but they won't do it because they don't know whether or not the person they're with will go along with what they're assigned to do, especially a man. Because men are given task and assignment by God when they're in line with him. And if they're in line with him, they have to have a helper that understands the assignment that he's been given, so that they can work together. If you are in an assignment and she doesn't want to do it with you, you're going to have some challenges in your relationship, especially when you find out that it's an assignment from God.
So, you know, you said that you're not supposed to go looking. So maybe one of the conflicts for a man to be looking is because the Bible say a man findeth a good wife.
I'm so glad you said that. So I'm gonna help your audience with this myth. And a lot of pastors, it's a myth. No, well, not a myth. I want to say two things. There's two things that go along with that. And over the course of my 50 plus years, I've heard that. I've heard many ministers in the pulpit say it. So I want to share this with you, and I want to share it with your audience, and I just want you to think about it.
Okay.
In the Bible, if you read it through, there was never a time that God said, "He that findeth a wife findeth a good thing." Because when in Genesis, he said, "All that I have made is good." So she was already a good thing. So the man didn't have to find her as far as good. But here's who said it. Solomon said it. Solomon said, "He that finds a wife finds a good thing," because it was in Proverbs, and Solomon wrote Proverbs. So here it is. You have this man, Solomon, who says, "He that finds a wife finds a good thing." Why did he say that? Here's why he said it. Solomon was challenged by women. He had 400 wives, 300 concubines. He had 700 women. So he never was satisfied with one wife, which is the Lord allowed him to have those many, and he gave him one rule. Do not allow them to have you change to their gods. And that's biblical. But he, of course, got swayed by women, and he started serving their gods. And then he began to lose everything that God gave him. So his statement was, "He that finds a wife finds a good thing." Why? Because he never found a wife. He had wives and concubines. So he didn't know what it was like to have one that fulfilled everything. And that's why he made that statement. So how can a man who has 700 women, 300 wives, 400 wives, 300 concubines, really say what it means to have a wife? Because he's never had a wife. And this was spiritually downloaded in me. And I was, let me tell you, Linda, when the Lord laid this on my spirit, I was, it was so difficult to talk about it or even think about it, because all these years, that is a statement that people rely on. Like, he that finds a wife finds a good thing. But why does a man have to find a wife for her to be good? she was already made good. The Lord said, all that I have made is good. So there is no other individual who can say what's good or not. So that's the biggest thing. When I went through and read, and the Lord was like, okay, I'm gonna show you this, and it's gonna mess up a lot of people, so get ready. But I know you can handle it because you can explain it. You have the skill of
it.
And so that, as I have shared that with individuals who have made those statements, from a standpoint of being taught that, and I fault no one because it's a biblical statement. It's right there in Proverbs, but what people have to understand is you have to decipher what God says versus what man says. And God has never said, he that finds a wife finds a good thing. Why? Because he doesn't have to say it, because she's already good.
Wow. Well, I have to ask you about the only thing that seems to be consistent when they talk about a woman. They don't say what she finds, but they say a woman's place is in the home.
That's a great statement, and that's a man statement, because I think when we look at what is designed for a woman, she's the helper. As a matter of fact, a woman has more wisdom than man. In a lot of cases, they don't know how much power they have because they've had their power taken from them from a standpoint of society, from a standpoint of a man overpowering them. That's why a woman was given intuition, because if you look through the Bible biblically, from the stories, there are a lot of men in great positions who were making decisions, but they didn't get saved from the situation until their wife came in with wisdom and said, hey, we should do it this way to avoid certain things. And when they looked at it, sometimes they did it quietly in the Bible. They went and did it without the husband even knowing, and saved him. Because women, I tell, when I have an opportunity to talk about it, I say, a man, when he's happy, buys a house. But when he's happy and he has a woman in his life, he buys a home. Because he knows he's never going to do anything in the house until he has his helper make it a home. And so that's when you're talking about a woman's place is in a particular location. Her place is next to him with the equipment she has for him. And when men realize that the person that's being, the person that is sent to you or gifted to you has all the equipment you need to make your situation better. So she's your partner, she's your helper, she's your helpmeet. And here's another thing, Linda, since you got me here. In the beginning, when you talk about Adam and Eve, the Lord never named her wife. Moses said that she was his wife because he was narrating Genesis. But Adam, because he got all caught up, named her Eve. But the Lord said, that is your helpmeet. So if the Lord says that's your helper, you don't have to name her anything else, but you chose to name her Eve. And now you have a situation where people, of course, during the course of that time, Moses like, well, that's his wife, because later on, that's what they became. But the Lord never in the Bible said that is your wife. He always said, I'm sending you a helpmeet so that you can do the assignment for which I am tasking you to do, because there was only two things that Adam had. He had an assignment from God and a place to live, which was the garden in Eden. So he gave him a place to stay, and he gave him a job to do.
See, I have another question,
Come on with it.
We're talking about relationships, right?
Yeah.
Okay, one of the things that I noticed about especially a lot of Christian men,
mm-hmm.
They tend to feel that women are supposed to humble themselves behind them because of what Eve supposedly have done. Mm-hmm. So how do a woman get self-value from even a Christian man when he feels that she's beneath him because she has got us in the hell that we in on earth? Wow,
that's a great question. Okay, so here's the great listen, you sneaking in my book here. Okay. So here's the answer. Now I'm gonna go back to something I said. If a man of faith, or you want to say, let's say Christian man, if a Christian man understands his role, first of all, he would have understood that it was not his job to find the woman in his life. He was supposed to be preparing and doing the work of God. And in his work, the areas for which he might have been challenged in, he was going to be sent a helper who had the same spiritual strength to him so that they could work together on the assignment that God had given them. The difference is we go out and try to find, a man will go, first he will do two things. He's going to look at you visually, then he's going to look at you mentally. He's going to see if I like you. He's going to see if, she's pretty enough to be with me. And then I'm going to see how smart she is, which is nowhere near what God had assigned for a woman to have. He assigned her to have the insight and wisdom that's going to be available for the man once he's in his right position. And so when you have individuals where you say humble, both should be humble, because one, they should be on the same playing field as far as what they are assigned to do, to where they can have in-depth conversations about that task and assignment that God has given as far as their vision. And that's where we are messed up, because here's the thing. If Eve would have been given to Adam to do something outside of the garden that wasn't Adam's assignment, they would have had a problem. Because she would have been on the outside of the garden, he would have been in the garden, and she would have been trying to do her thing. He would have been doing what God had assigned him to do. So, but he was in the garden with an assignment, and the Lord gave him an individual with the same assignment to do what he needed to do. But here's the thing. The only thing that happened was she lost focus. She lost focus on the vision that was given to Adam. So if you are an individual or in a relationship where someone loses focus on what you're assigned to do, you're going to have another individual who's going to try to stand over them and be the one that's always in charge, which is not the case. A woman is so brilliant. Women are so brilliant and so wise, and we hold them down from the things that they can actually elevate us in because we don't understand what God infused in them. So when you're talking about being humble, a woman is sent to the individual already humble, because she should be going to an individual who is humbled, because in order to serve God, you got to be humble. So if a man is not humbled, he is not the right person to be with in the first place. So, women, I think they have to understand they are supposed to strongly work side by side as a helper with the individual they are assigned to. And that's the thing, when a man doesn't understand that a woman is assigned to him, she has been sent and gifted, that assignment is a great assignment, Linda. And when a woman knows that I know I'm supposed to be with that man. The Lord has sent me to him, because a woman should never look for a man. It's not her job. And a lot of women, they get sidetracked when they, you ask that question, girl, you looking for a man? Yeah, and then you've already messed up, because it ain't your job to do. The Lord never told a woman to look for a man.
So how do you deal with a mind of a man that feels justified because of Eve in the garden? Because to a certain point, they don't talk about it, but they feel justified in seeing them less of themselves, like they're supposed to be punished to a certain degree because of disobedience.
Well, here's the thing. When we talk about the garden, and I love that story is so powerful, because we look at it from a natural standpoint of what people teach us about it versus going into it and finding out what that story is really about. The greatest thing from a standpoint of that story, from a mistake standpoint, is Eve was left without protection. Because listen, the one thing that you have to look at is every beast in the garden was able to walk, including the serpent, because he whispered in her ear. The snake is not going to whisper in your ear unless he's capable of being at ear level. So before he was cursed to the ground, he was able to speak into her ear or see her for which. So the serpent had to be beautiful, because here's the reason why. A woman will never let another man next to her unless she loses focus based on how he looks. And so here's a serpent that was probably beautiful and was allowed to get next to her. Why? Because the man that was even more beautiful than the serpent wasn't there to protect her. So men have to understand that it's our job and it's our place to be the protector first. Because one, we have to be in position at all times, because we will never be attacked first. Our partner will always be attacked. If we are on an assignment, the correct assignment, the woman will always be attacked first. Because the area, you're always going to go to an area that you think is the weakest link, and it's not the case. Because a man will never be influenced by anybody else other than his woman. She's the most powerful influencer in his life. And so the serpent went to who? He went to Eve, because she was the most powerful influence to Adam. And the only way he could mess up everything was to get her to do what she did, to get the man to do what he did. Because if he would have been with Eve, I guarantee you that the serpent would have never approached her with Adam standing there, because his job was to be the protector.
Well, do you think that was just really actually part of destiny?
It was a part of choice, because the Lord still gave them choice. So think about it. In most cases, when you're having a conversation, you're having a conversation based on the ability to choose which direction you're going to go in. And so if you have a powerful influence, which the serpent was, because he knew what they were told, and his ability to have the silver tongue was the difference. And for one moment of lost focus, we have crossed over into the life that we have as far as sin, because they went against what God told them to do. So, and that happens today. The majority of relationships are influenced by an individual who has a silver tongue that is capable of making you lose focus, male or female, for a moment, because you didn't have your protection. You didn't have your covering.
Wow.
So if the woman has the covering, she will do everything in her power to stay under the covering with the person she's with. She will not look at anything else. So that means for a moment, Adam wasn't in place. The man wasn't in place to do what he was supposed to do. And that's why men feel guilty, because the only way a man will feel bad about something is if he's not in line with what he's supposed to do.
Well, you know what? I'm just glad to hear this perspective, because I was talking to someone one day and I said, you know, when I read the Bible, I feel like God has never stopped talking to people. And I feel that people have to understand a lot of the writers were speaking from their perspective, their experiences, and interpretation of what they felt things were. And a lot of them, to me, was chauvinistic.
Well, you had all men writers.
Right. And they were not very kind to women.
Yeah, I think that's a great statement. I don't know if I will say the word kind. I think that what they were given as far as being given to write, you had so many different. You had over 1,800 interpretations. I think my dad used to teach us, and I can't remember what it is, but they were influenced not only spiritually, but they were influenced naturally. So they had to break down, no different than ministers today. The same ministers today are interpreting a scripture how they see it, and then how the spirit is laid into them. So they'll get insight, and then they'll put their twist on it so that you can understand. And sometimes the twist is incorrect. Sometimes it's correct.
Personal.
Yeah. Because there's a difference between someone who preaches a particular word versus someone who teaches a particular word. And a lot of individuals preach information that you don't even understand versus being taught and having it broken down, because you have to rightly divide the word of truth. And to rightly divide it is to know it. You just can't be out there hooping and hollering. You got to actually teach somebody that they can grab and say, you know what, that makes sense to me, because I was able to take something away and see that this applies to me. And sometimes it may not apply to you, but it may apply to someone that just got through talking to you, and you can share it. If you never heard what was being preached or what was being taught to you, because you couldn't understand it, how can you go back and teach anyone? And that's where we struggle with. That's my biggest struggle when it's about the ministry, is that many individuals go to church and they don't come out with anything that was talked about or spoken about, other than the Lord died on the cross and rose the third day. We already know that. Give me something that you can break down and I can say, you know what, I can use that tomorrow. Just like when you look at when you talk about my spiritual message moment, the word that I take, you can actually look at that word and say, you know what, I'll be doggone, I can use that tomorrow. Well, matter of fact, I can use it today because it made sense to me. And that's how we should be taught on a day-to-day basis. The Lord gave parables, and his parables were very plain enough for us to even talk about them today, and that they apply. And that's how it should be every Sunday.
And in your book, what is it most important that you want people to understand about relationships? Because you really broke that down to the point where I wish teenage boys could actually read that book, because you give them a foundation of understanding that they don't get, even if they have a good family foundation. Like you said, you didn't have the relationship skills. Well, your book actually provide that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if there was a particular thing that I think there would be one or two things. One, the book was written two different ways. It was written, one, for men to have a tool that they could use in their relationships that wasn't overbearing. It just made sense. If you read it, it was so simplistic, and things that we overlook because we were never taught it.
Right.
And I've been, again, I saw so much of that and was taught it that it was like, man, this is simple. Let me write this book because this is simple. And the second part to that was, it was the book for women to recognize men who are like that. Because the other part was, women will pray, they will ask, they will, talk about the type of man that they want. Sometimes they will get it, and it's the worst situation that they get because they were not specific. And so this book walks you through what a man kind of looks like, from a standpoint of from a conversation, from intimacy, what he should know about you, what he should have written about you. There should be things he should be able to see in advance. And there are certain circumstances, if things don't work out, it still be able to work out, because you should have the ability to talk to each other regardless. And so I take you through the whole gamut, from love to listening to legacy to whatever it may be, from a standpoint of natural and spiritual. Because if I was a young man, or one of the things I used to say, what would I tell myself now, years later, if I was younger? And then I realized I would say this: I do have a younger son. I got a 30-year-old son. So during the course of that time, he and I would have those conversations. And then the young men who would come to me, I would actually impart the wisdom that I learned through these books, through the book, and things that I learned through life into them, so they could actually see it from a totally different perspective. And so it's not that I'm a person that knows it all, but I know what I know. And I know that everything that I was taught works. I watched it. And even if you stray from it, you'll come back to it because it's so good. And so that was part of what I put in the book was, if you read this book, and I'm gonna tell you something, I really didn't even promote that book. And I know I should have, but it was just a book for me, more or less. And so I'm gonna relaunch it. But that book is so profound from a standpoint of, I don't know if I think you saw it, but I don't know if you know this. I wrote the book, and the reason I didn't complete the book was because there was something missing. And it took me literally 14 years to figure it out. And so one day it hit me. You know what was missing? My brother's not in the book, because he went through the whole process with me. So I had him write his sermons. All the sermons that correlated with my chapters are in the book. And then something else hit me. I was like, wait a second. There's one more person missing. It was my father. So I had the things he taught us, and had some of the things he had wrote to us and everything is another part in the book. So all three of us are in the book. So individuals will see his insight handed down to us, and handed down to my brother as now a minister or pastor, and then I got a chance to put it in layman's term, in the street term, and all those. So I got a chance to do my version of it all the way through, and then place them in position where you see a spiritual side that just brings it all together.
You definitely described that very well. Because the way you wrote, it's almost like you were actually sitting down talking to us. Because there was times I was like, okay, I'm gonna sit down. I'm gonna turn the TV off. Because you said turn the TV off.
Yeah. Listen, I thought that it was funny because I was asked, well, how are you gonna start the book? I'm gonna start the book with the very thing that causes the most issues, and it's the one-eyed demon. And they were like, what do you mean the one-eyed demon? The TV, because that is the most detrimental tool that separates and messes up relationships, because men have never been taught how to really communicate without having something make them lose focus. And the TV has been the thing that made us lose focus. And I talk about it even when you're trying to teach your significant other something that you like. How do you break it down? And I even broke you, and you read it. I broke down sports. How do you teach it from an intimate standpoint?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think that turn the TV off, is profound. I mean, it hits you right away.
But I mean, I'm telling you, you were so on point in so many ways and areas that people who trying to understand the male and female uniting as one. This is such a gift.
Thank you. Thank you.
The title of the book, tell them the title of that book again.
The title of the book is I Am a Testimony Inside the Relationship Mind of a PK, which is a preacher's kid.
Go ahead.
And again, that book was a tool based on all the things that my brother and I got an opportunity to see on the backside and talk about with my dad, some of the things that he didn't share openly with individuals. He just wanted us to have that insight, so that we would come up and have a good understanding in relationships and the good and the bad. And so the things that he had to teach, back in the 80s, he started this program called Rebuilders, and he helped individuals who went through divorce get their families back together. And he was doing this in the 80s. And we had to be in on it. We had to, sit in on the classes, learn. And so those were things that my friends, my classmates and schoolmates, they were not privy to that in their home. They were not getting that kind of information. And I have friends today who say, man, we did not know that you guys were that far advanced from a standpoint. I was going to seminars at 13. I got my seminar books that's older than my son. So I still had that information, which people today have never seen. So I'm able to teach that information, and then it'll be for the first time to them. So that book was more or less a legacy book, and a kind of like a thank you to my dad, from the standpoint of the tools that we got a chance to expand on, because of course with us living longer now, and he got two sons in their 50s who have seen way more than the average individual who we grew up with and the people that we meet, because they recognize it right away.
Right.
Wait a second, where you learn that from? This is what I was being taught at 4 and 5 years old.
Well, this is an amazing book, and I hope you do relaunch it, because especially now, people are so out of touch with understanding relationships and the value.
Yeah.
They feel like it's just get on their nerves.
Yeah.
Because they don't understand the value if you have that right companion in relationship, how it has an effect on the foundation for family structure for a child, like you said, becoming an adult.
Yeah.
If they have this, it can make a whole difference in the world.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that you will relaunch that book.
I am going to do it. I'm actually going to change the cover. Because I'm doing a series, the Spiritual Message Moment series. It will not be part of that, but it will be a different color. It'll be more eye-catching, and the information will not be changed, because it's still powerful information. And so,
because it has its time and season, and it's a time for everything. Because I have had books that just won't die. keep coming back with a different cover and a title, and it just won't die.
Yeah. And so because of the timing, the time frame in which, again, in which I wrote it, you know, and hanging on to it for the length of time that I did, and then the launching time, I didn't take it serious from a standpoint of the book, because it was something that I had to release out of me.
It was a healing process, and that's usually where you get your best books.
Oh,
but
man.
now you realize it's a real tool.
It really is. It really is. Because I had to read back through. I read back through it a couple months ago, and the thing that scared me the most was how good it was.
How it even helped you.
I was like, who is this?
You know you have written an amazing book.
Yeah, I was like, who is this? I mean, who wrote this? I'm like, wait a second, I don't remember that.
I understand that process, but now you have to let the wings open and go on this now. But
Absolutely.
first you do hold on to it, because it is your inner, it is your soul, you know, but now you can let it go because you have read it, digested it, and you're one with it now, and you don't mind sharing because you know that it has a universal purpose. It wasn't just for your healing process. But you don't realize that, especially when you're becoming an author, what God is actually doing. That's what I'm saying. The writers in the Bible, they go through the same process.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you was writing something, you didn't even realize what it actually was.
Right.
You know? It was like you was just releasing and just containing something that you didn't want to lose. So you write it down, you won't lose it. But now you have it documented and it's ready to go to the people that really need it. You know what? If people want to get your book and want to get in touch with you for speaking engagements, training, your clothing,
mm-hmm.
all of these things, how do they contact you?
Oh, great question. Again, thank you, Linda, for allowing me to share your platform. Everything is under two things. You can go to my website, which is johnmcclungjr.com, just like my name. And then everything else is under I Am a Testimony. My LinkedIn is under John McClung Jr. My Facebook is under John McClung. And then also I have Friends of I Am a Testimony on Facebook. And then I also have my Instagram is I Am a Testimony. So if you look up I Am a Testimony, my name is the first thing that comes up, or anything that's attached to the apparel brand. And so that information is also under the web page. And my information as far as you can call me. And then if you want to book me, that's on there. And I can always send out my press kit, because the one thing is, if there was one person that you would want to have on your stage, it would be me.
I have to agree with that.
So I'm going to put myself on the back of that.
Yeah. That, you know, because you let God do whatever he want to do.
Yeah.
Okay, John.
Listen,
you are on the Truth Will Set You Free show. Give us a truth to remember you by.
Oh, awesome. Here's the truth to remember me by. Your testimony is a lifestyle. Not only can you share it, but you can also wear it.
Awesome. Thank you for being on our show.
Well, thank you for allowing me to share with you over this course of time, and be able to break some things down, as we have always kind of, like, since we've met, talked about, and I appreciate it very much.
When you get this book going, you have to come back.
Oh, absolutely. You don't even have to worry about that. I'll keep you in the loop.
Take care.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.